and I've read about the companions and the Salaf and everyone else. I know who I am. I'm the creation of Allah.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam wa barak. I was born in Harlesden back in the late 60s. My family, that's my mother and father, they hail from the Caribbean island of St. Lucia. And I was born largely in the black community, that meaning most of the people around me when I went to school, both primary and secondary school, were from the Afro-Caribbean community. I went to a normal school, a regular school like everybody else, one called Harlesden Primary School, which I have many fond memories, and I had many good times. But one thing that stuck in my mind from that time was the belief in God. I grew up in a family that was Roman Catholic, and we wouldn't regularly go to church, but we would go to church on special events like Lent, Easter, Christmas. Those times we would try our best to go to church, and when we could, we'd go on a Sunday. And so I came from a family that considered itself to be Christian, and in terms of belief, devoutly Christian. One of the things that troubled me from a young age was the concept of man being God. I found it very difficult in the back of my mind to accept the fact that Jesus, the Son of Mary, was God. I always saw him as a prophet, a man of much piety, a man of God, meaning that he was somebody who was religious, and he was a good person, and a person who God sent to humans to call them back to his worship. But I found it very difficult to accept the concept of him being a God. It was in my secondary school that this idea really hit me hard, in that there was a ritual in which we were supposed to kiss the cross, and on the cross was an image of Jesus as they saw it, and I was told to kiss this image of Jesus, and I found it hard to bring myself to kiss the statue though I did it. And as I was growing up, going through secondary school, learning more about my own culture, black culture, started to listen to music and becoming more grounded in my culture, there came a lot of troubling questions. One of the troubling questions, as more I studied black history, I realized was, where were black people in the Bible? Where were black people in Christianity? So I would go to a church, a Catholic church, and I look on the wall, the ceiling, you will see that the disciples of Jesus was white. I look on the wall and I would see that disciples of Jesus, they were white. Jesus himself was supposed to be God is white. And you know, the Leonardo da Vinci finger of God pointing down was white. And I asked myself, if the disciples are white, Jesus is white, and God is white, then where do we black people stand in all of this? As I got older, particularly after secondary school, I became deeply interested into music, and I became a DJ. Initially I was a DJ, like an MC on a soul sound. That was a sound that played soul music, and I used to just rap, just compare. Then afterwards I slowly became a DJ, that is, I would mix the records and scratch the records. And my interest in love of music became even more deeper, in that I became not only a DJ, so with my friends we'd do gigs in clubs and parties and stuff like that. We'd have house parties where we do events, you know, like a warehouse, or if there was a house that was vacated, what we would do is that we'd hold a party there, collect money at the door, sell drinks, make money from that. But also I was on two pirate radio stations, one known as Obsession and the other as Strong Island Radio. These were quite well known back in the 90s, well, the 80s, early 90s in North London, Northwest London. So I would have my own shows known as DJ Kareem, but also because the studio wasn't far away from where I lived, I would fill in for people. So, you know, I'd love to fill in, for example, if a DJ couldn't make it, I'd take over his show for that hour or those 2 hours. And also at the same time as making my own music, I used to have a sampler, which allows you to sample to record music, and I had some equipment, some keyboards and stuff. and we started something called True Knowledge, which basically was myself and another guy. I was producing some people, you know, amateurs we were. I had like 4 or 5 artists between singers and rappers, and he would have 4 or 5 people. So we came together and we called ourselves TKO, True Knowledge Organization. However, after some weeks of the founding of the True Knowledge Organization, I started to work, especially working in education, so I had less time to dedicate to the music. But before that, I was heavily into music, and I had lots of records, over 2,000 LPs and the 12 inches, and good 200-300 cassettes. And I would travel and go to America. I spent, when I went to America, maybe £2,000-3,000 on records. I suppose if you take into consideration inflation today, worked out to be maybe what, £4,000-5,000 each time I went to buy music. And I came back from the States with massive suitcases full of LPs. I thought I was crazy. So this is, you know, a part of my musical journey that took me into, you know, being more exposed to political type of music, like Public Enemy. When Public Enemy came out in the 90s, for most people my age, it was a time of consciousness development, being conscious about being black and about African history. And many of us, we got into reading again, studying again, learning about black history. One day I heard a track by the name of Malcolm X No Sellout. So I'm listening and I'm hearing speeches or parts of speeches from Malcolm X. So I asked myself, who is this guy Malcolm X? Never heard of Malcolm X. I've heard of Martin Luther King. I heard of Angela Davis, who was an icon back in the 70s. But who is Malcolm X? So I went to the library, I got to a book about Malcolm X's autobiography, and I started to read. And it's one of the few books that I've read that I couldn't put down. I just had to continue reading. So I started to read about Malcolm X, and in reading about Malcolm X, I learned the story about a young man who, coming from a dysfunctional family, his father was killed, his mother suffered from mental depression. He went to live with one of his relatives, and he's growing up, become involved in music, alcohol, drugs, moves to New York City, where he gets entangled with a gang of people who gets involved in robbing white people. Then he's arrested, put in prison, and in prison he discovers the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, which he thought was Islam, which are not Islamic teachings in a strict sense. And he comes out as a follower of Elijah Muhammad and Faradin Islam, that is the Islam of Farad Muhammad. And over time and space becomes an advocate for black liberation, as an advocate for this type of Islam. Then he leaves the Nation of Islam because of a rupture between him and his mentor Elijah Muhammad, and him finding out that Elijah Muhammad had adulterous relationships in which he bore a number of illegitimate children, and he becomes a Sunni Muslim. So reading that, I became very much interested in Islam. But however, one of the problems, especially then, was there weren't many Muslims around in our area, and those people were Muslims. They kind of blended in the multicultural source. You couldn't see them and know where they are or their places of worship, unlike today. After a number of years, I went to visit one of my relatives in America who lived in New York City. So one day we were taking a train from New York to Connecticut, and at this train station I came across some brothers. They were wearing Sudanese clothing, they had Islamic literature and oils, and I greeted them and they greeted me back, and these people were very loving and warm and welcoming. They said to me they belong to an organization called the Nubian Islamic Hebrews. Now, the Nubian Islamic Hebrews were a black supremacist organization that they believed that black people were superior, particularly over whites. And they claimed to be Islamic or Muslim, however, their doctrines and their teachings were totally against Islam. Rather, it was a cult, a group set up by their founder, known today as Dr. York, or Dwight York, who has now been in prison for over 100 years for molestation of young people and women. And also in my journey, I studied the teachings of Elijah Muhammad and Louis Farrakhan. And Elijah Muhammad and Louis Farrakhan, they both believe that God incarnated, came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, who is called. And in Islam, we don't believe Allah came in the form of a man. We believe that Allah is unique and can never take on the form of his creation. This is not befitting for Allah to do so. But this is their belief. They also believe that is Farrakhan and the nation of Islam, that Elijah Muhammad is a messenger. He is a prophet. Elijah Muhammad said himself that he is a prophet, the last messenger of Allah. And we as Muslims, we believe that the Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, peace and blessings be upon him, he is the last, the seal of all the prophets. And anybody who comes after him and says he's a prophet is indeed a charlatan and is a liar. So when I came back from my journey to America, I got all my clothing, Western clothing, put them in a bag except for what I was wearing. I went to the bookshop, and so from that day I considered myself to be a Muslim, though I didn't know much about Islam. This took place in June, and then in the September I went to university. Something strange happened over these few months, in that I met a brother who was a Sufi, and one day when I went into his bedroom, which I had not been in before, to pray, because I came to his house late, used to go to his house once a week to try and to learn about Islam, and for social reasons. I went to his bedroom, and on his wall was plastered literally hundreds of pictures of the Sheikh. If you can imagine, somebody gets a ream of photocopying paper, they photocopy an A4 size picture of somebody 100, 200 times, plastered it on the wall. That's what happened. So when I said to him, hey brother, I noticed on your wall you have like one side of the wall plastered with pictures of your Sheikh. Why is this? He said, well, I have them there because anytime I have a need, I focus on the pictures of the Sheikh and he helps me with my need. Now, here's me, a new Muslim, but I thought that was strange. Why would you go through an intermediary, a human being like yourself, when you can go straight to Allah, straight to God? I said, this sounds just like Christianity. When you have a problem, you go through another human, Jesus, to get to God, when you can go straight to God. So in October of 1990, I went to university. By that time, I really thought I was Muslim. I dressed like a Muslim. I consider myself to be Muslim. However, I wasn't really doing much in terms of prayer and other acts of worship, because by then I had really no one to seek knowledge with, to get information about Islam, to help me perfect my rituals and understanding of the rituals of Islam. And I came across somebody in university who, seeing that I was Muslim, and that person was very religious and part of an organisation that was a Dawah organisation, came up to me and asked me if I was Muslim. I said, yeah, but I haven't been praying, doing much. And the person said to me something that reverberated in my mind. They said, how would you feel if you died today and you met your Lord? And I said, SubhanAllah, if I died today and I met Allah, I hadn't prayed or nothing. It just hit me. From that moment, I said, yeah, I've got to get back on my salah, got to get back on, the acts of worship that I was doing, my fasting and everything like that, and started to learn. The person gave me a book called Tawheed, and I started to read the book, and it kind of opened my eyes, not only just to what Tawheed is, but I used to believe people like Elijah Muhammad, Farrakhan were Muslims, and they taught Islam. And I learned that the type of Islam that they believed in, Faradi Islam, wasn't really Islam. Allah didn't came in the form of a man, neither was it acceptable to hold this belief, and that Elijah Muhammad claiming that he was a prophet was the antithesis to the belief of Islam. And I started to learn more about Islam, and like Malcolm X, became more Sunni. That is, somebody was a Sunni Orthodox Muslim, that is following the Islam of the Prophet and his companions. And this is meant by the word Salafi. When people hear the word Salafi, to them in their mind they have negative connotations, but Salafi is synonymous with Sunni, meaning the person who understands Islam according to the way of the Prophet and the first 3 generations of Islam. The Prophet said, the best of generations are mine, then those that follow them, then those that follow them. Meaning, the best of generations in terms of knowing and understanding and practicing Islam is his generation, then the generation that succeeds them, then the generation that succeeds that generation. So the first 3 generations of Islam. And this is what is meant by Sunni, that's what meant by Salafi. And so this type of Islam that I was attracted to, and I studied and I learned more about, and alhamdulillah, I'm still upon till today. One of the things that attracted me to Sunni Islam or Salafiyah is that it is a text-based Islam, meaning that it's based in the Quran and the Sunnah, understanding these sources according to that generation that was there when it was revealed. It's not a religion, it's not Islam based upon fables or stories or hearsays or secret knowledge passed on from one man to another man in secret, but rather it's there for anybody to learn. It could be the Quran, you can go to the Quran, it could be the Hadith, you can go to the Sunnah, but how do we understand these sources? We understand these sources based upon that generation that it was revealed to, that is the Sahaba. And this is what attracted to me, its purity. Now going back to the source of Islam, without intermediaries, without some particular person's or some individual's opinion. Another important thing about Salafiyah is that it grounds itself and concerns itself with Aqidah and Tawheed, with the Islamic creed, especially Tawheed. That somebody, the Muslim, has to understand what is Tawheed, monotheism, and place that at the center of their Islam and their worship of Allah. The Salafiyah, Sunni Islam, goes back to the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. May Allah reward you, and guide us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Since I've come to Tawheed and I've read about the companions and the Salaf and everyone else, I know who I am. I'm the creation of Allah.